What if you could ditch Windows, boost your gaming experience and get a Steam Deck style interface on almost any PC? Meet Bazzite, the Linux-based gaming operating system, turning heads everywhere. Meet me in a moment where I tell you all about it. I love my Steam Deck, and since getting it, all I've done is play this for hours and hours with all the games that I love. I have never really been into gaming consoles, but I play this quite regularly. In a previous video, I did a review on this, the Mamba 1 Hall Effect game controller, and I mentioned how I don't particularly like this up-down of these because my thumbs feel really uncomfortable on this step-down approach, and I don't really like this configuration at all. But since getting a Steam Deck and using the trackpads, I feel this is more enjoyable for me, and this is definitely the way I like to play. I have reserved a Steam controller, and I did this in May, way back then when it was released, but they are so far behind with orders. Mine says it won't be in my hands until at least 2027. Whether that's early 27 or mid 27, who knows. So with that, I have decided to build a PC just to play games on in my living room on my TV. And what better way to do that than to look at building something that runs Steam and looks a little like the Steam Deck and maybe performs a little bit better than the advertised Steam machine itself. On my quest, I'll be looking at 3 alternatives, and this is the first video of 3. So today we're diving into Bazzite, a game-focused Linux distro that's blowing up in the PC gaming world, and it's designed for desktops, handhelds, home theatre PCs, and basically anything you want to turn into a console-like gaming machine. And to be brutally honest, this thing might be one of the biggest threats Microsoft has seen in gaming history. So what exactly is Bazzite? Well, Bazzite is a Fedora-based Linux operating system built specifically for gaming. Think of it like SteamOS for almost any computer, not just the Steam Deck. It comes with Steam pre-installed, includes gaming optimizations out of the box, it supports HDR and VRR, and even ships with Nvidia drivers already set up and ready to go. I must say though that I have spent many hours trying to get the Nvidia drivers working, and all I got was loads of artifacts and absolute rubbish on screen. After trawling through tons and tons of forums, I had nothing there at all that fixed this, so I've instead reverted to the AMD version, and I'm using an RX 9060 XT with 16GB of GDDR6. And to be fair, with those particular things in place, most people in the Linux community know that having Nvidia drivers is a big deal. Now, Bazzite is becoming quite popular right now, and reports say downloads have massively surged after Windows 10's end-of-life announcement, with gamers looking for alternatives to Windows 11. And honestly, I get it. A lot of gamers are tired of forced updates, background bloatware, telemetry that's always sent, adverts, and AI, and random performance issues that shuts your computer off for no apparent reason. Something different is Bazzite. It's lightweight, it's gaming first, and designed to stay out of your way. Now, the installation process is really simple, and as you can see on screen, I'm going to go through this, but there are 2 different variants of Bazzite which I've mentioned. You've got Nvidia and you've got the AMD. You pick the one that you want from the website. You then use Rufus to burn it to a memory stick. I know, what is the world coming to where we still need to use memory sticks to run operating systems? You then stick it in your computer, turn it on and get it to boot from said USB stick. Once it boots, you get this wonderful live screen, which is really nice. I chose the Nvidia one to start with, like I said, but I reverted to the AMD version after some issues that I mentioned. You're then presented with this warning, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, I know what I'm doing, even though many people would think otherwise. Then you click the Install Bazzite button. It seems to sit for a while, but then you get some options. You select the one that you want. So I'm from the UK, so those are mine. You follow the next button, and when you get to the destination drive option, this depends on what you want to do. Are you going to dual boot your system? Then you choose the first option. Or is this going to be a dedicated drive that you're going to run the entire system from? Or you can do it manually. I chose use the second option, use the entire disk. Once you click next, it asks you if you want encryption. So I don't want that. Let's go next. Then it takes you to your usernames and passwords. You fill it in with whatever suits your fancy. Then you click next again. It gives you the details, and you need to tick the box to accept that everything on the drive will be destroyed. Then you finish, and now you wait for what seems like forever. Once it's completed, you're then presented with this particular screen which asks you to exit to the live desktop. Click that button, and then you shut down the machine by clicking the icon in the bottom, which is very similar to a Windows icon but Bazzite. You go to shut down, you shut down the machine, remove the memory stick that you installed the operating system from, and then switch the computer back on. Once you do that, it boots into Bazzite. It then boots directly into a very similar SteamOS looking facility. You are then presented with the place to put your username and password for Steam and a QR code. So if you're using the Steam Vault thing that's on your phones and you use it that way, you can scan the QR code, it will ask you to log in. I have come across an occasion where it's asked you loads of different questions as to why are you doing this, but that's all pretty much okay. Then you are good to go. You are then presented with this said screen, which looks exactly like a Steam Deck. It's just phenomenal how close it looks. One of the coolest things here of Bazzite is it literally is Steam Deck looking. You have a wonderful experience just like Steam Deck, so if you're used to it, that's great. It includes this exact same Steam gaming mode, the console-style interface that Valve built for Steam Deck. So instead of booting into a traditional desktop, you boot straight into a controller-friendly gaming interface, and that means couch gaming is going to feel amazing. For handhelds, if you're using something like the Asus ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go, you can install Bazzite on that, and that's where it gets even more interesting. So why it's interesting is some users are claiming that it has better battery life, lower overhead and smoother performance compared to Windows on those same handheld gaming PCs. Now here I have it on a full PC setup, so I don't need to worry about the thing like battery life. But those other things that I've mentioned still apply. Now, before we go into the whole clickbait mode, it's important to understand why. Linux, in general, has fewer background processors running. So on lower powered devices, like those handhelds, that can translate into better efficiency. Less junk running in the background means more resources available for your games, and Bazzite is heavily optimized for exactly that. Even on a full PC setup, you get some good advantages. Now here's the big question that everybody kind of asks. Yeah, it's cool and all, but can it actually play my games? And surprisingly, for the most part, yes, thanks to Valve's Proton compatibility layer. Games now run on Linux, and you can even install Deckyloader and use the ProtonDB Badges app to show which are compatible to play on Steam. But Bazzite also supports other launchers outside of Steam through something called Lutris and other general tools. So, Epic Games Store, that actually works. GOG, again, works fine. Battle.net, it usually works. It does have a few bugs and issues. Ubisoft Connect. Painfully, but yes, it does work if you want to use it. But let's keep this real. Bazzite is not perfect. Some competitive multiplayer games still refuse to work because of kernel-level anti-cheat systems. So if your life revolves around games like Valorant, Fortnite, or certain versions of Call of Duty, you're probably still stuck with Windows. And if you rely on software like Adobe Creative Cloud, again, Windows probably is your option. So for a lot of people, the best setup right now might actually be a dual boot system. Windows for the stuff that Linux still struggles with and the things that you might need, and Bazzite for literally everything else. One thing that I did keep seeing over and over again from the Linux gaming community is everything just works magically. That's really a huge compliment in Linux land. Gamers say Bazzite removes tons of setup headaches, unless you're using Nvidia at this stage, which obviously needs some work because I couldn't get it to work, unless I'm missing something, which I may have done something wrong, but you don't need to hunt for drivers. There's no manually configuring weird launch commands and no spending 3 hours fixing audio crackling because a particular config file got really annoyed with you and decided it wasn't going to work today. Bazzite basically takes all the complicated Linux gaming setup stuff and just does it for you. Now with this particular version of Linux, here's something that's really nerdy, and I think it's really cool. Bazzite is what's called an immutable Linux distro. What the heck does that mean? Well, it means that the core operating system is basically read-only. So it's much harder to accidentally break the system and brick it. And if an update goes completely wrong, you can literally roll back to a previous version, and that is insanely useful. Imagine Windows letting you instantly undo a broken graphics driver update. It's never going to happen. It doesn't happen. Windows just tells you to go away, gives you a blue screen of death with nothing useful on it, and goodbye computer. Now here's where expectations need to be realistic. Benchmarks show that Bazzite usually performs very similarly to other Linux distros, so please don't install this expecting a magical 50% FPS boost. That is not real life. The real advantage is convenience. It's gaming Linux without the pain, and honestly, that alone might be enough. I tested a few titles. Counter-Strike 2, this was getting 60 FPS, and this is due to, unfortunately, Bazzite running some games in what's called borderless window mode, which unfortunately for Counter-Strike 2 forces this game to limit its FPS to 60, which is playable, but it's not great if you're doing esports. Now, Shadow of the Tomb Raider was in excess of 90 plus FPS, depending on the scene you were on and where you were looking, with a max that I saw of 157 frames per second. Now, Doom the Dark Ages, on the other hand, was getting 184 frames per second on an average, and a maximum of 236, which is phenomenally awesome for that particular game. Plus, it's one of my go-to games at the moment, so I'm happy. So my final verdict, should you buy Bazzite? I say buy, it's not buy. Should you download and try Bazzite? If you're curious about Linux gaming, if you own a handheld PC, if you want a console-like PC experience, or if you're just sick of Windows nonsense, then honestly, yeah, Bazzite looks really compelling. But if all your favourite games rely on specific things like anti-cheat systems, or you absolutely need Windows-only applications, you might want to wait a little bit longer until those things become a little bit more compatible. Still, the fact that we can even have this conversation in 2026 is really wild. Linux gaming used to be an absolute joke, Now it's becoming a legitimate alternative. And Bazzite might be one of the biggest reasons why. So, would you switch from Windows to Bazzite? Tell me down in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into gaming tech, Linux handheld PCs, and weird nerdy software, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. And I'll see you next time in Nelly's Nerd Cave. See ya.